This same engine gave birth to some of my all-time favorite classics, like Return to Castle Wolfenstein, the Star Wars Jedi Knight games, and Soldier of Fortune 2, which might be another video entirely in the future if this one does well.
Similar to my previous video on heavy metal, which if you haven't seen, I highly recommend you check out, Soldier of Fortune 2 was one of those very same plastic wrapped treasures I was able to rip off the shelf as a teenager. Growing up watching my dad play Wolfenstein 3D on the computer and playing video games from a seriously young age, I was no stranger to the slew of first-person shooters being pumped out in the 2000s, and this was no exception. I'm glad that I grabbed this one when I did, because in all honesty, the case and box art really didn't give me a hell of a lot to go off, let alone spark my imagination or excitement. The magic of Soldier of Fortune 2 came entirely from how it looked and played once I got it in the PC. I remember countless hours of console command shenanigans, running around like a god, gifting out 12-gauge shells, watching limbs fly across the room, and the frankly horrific sounds stemming from the consequences of my actions. Looking back, I really was lucky to experience these games while having parents with fairly strict views in a time where violent video games were lighting up the headlines, trying to link violent patterns in games to violence and aggression in real life, especially in children and teenagers. And look at me now! I turned out completely fine. Coming. Fuck you!
If I want to kill you, I'd have to tell you.
We can't rule it.
I just killed a cop. You all saw him step in front of me, right, chat? But, oh fuck, it's lava!
You don't say, Jonathan. One thing that I never did was play either of the other titles in the Soldier of Fortune series up until I started research for this video. So, in celebration of my fondness for the second game in the series in particular, I decided to play through the whole series to see how it holds up, and was it really fortunate to be a soldier in these times, or was it soldier unfortunate? I don't know, I'm sorry, roll the intro. Some games have always liked to push boundaries. Some games definitely crossed those boundaries. And then there was Soldier of Fortune, a series built entirely on the idea that the human body should come apart like a Lego set. Released in 2000 and running on a modified Quake 2 engine, Soldier of Fortune wasn't subtle. It was loud, messy, brutal, and proud of it. This was another one of those games your parents definitely wouldn't have brought you or let you play if they knew about it, which, of course, in turn, made it 10 times cooler. Activision acquired the Soldier of Fortune license from a US mercenary magazine at the time aptly titled Soldier of Fortune, in order to bring the magazine's ideals and stories to life in a semi-realistic setting. The magazine was founded in 1975 by former Green Beret Lieutenant Colonel Robert K. Brown. Soldier of Fortune was a monthly publication that catered to mercenaries, military contractors, and freedom fighters. Think tactical gear reviews, war stories, and job listings for actual paramilitary gigs. Yeah, real-life classified ads for private military operations. At the core of this partnership was John F. Mullins, a former US Army major and Special Forces officer turned consultant, who helped bring the game and its main character to life in the first two games. So while the games leaned into pulp action and gore first and foremost, they had genuine roots in a publication that blurred the line between journalism and real-world war-for-hire grit. Developed by Raven Software, back when they made weird, awesome stuff instead of whatever the fuck they do now, this was a game built around one very specific promise: realistic anatomical violence. And not like, oh, you shot a guy and there's a blood puddle. No. We're talking limbs flying, organs spilling, screams echoing off concrete walls while you reload your shotgun kinds of violence. It was pretty awesome. This was all made possible by the majesty that is the GHOUL engine. GHOUL enabled players to deal damage to around 26 different zones on an enemy's character, all with separate animations and the moral quandaries that come with dismembering human beings. In fact, your morality may be even more in question, as enemies wouldn't just fall over and die after having their balls blown off. They would stumble, crawl, scream, and even try to crawl away from your blood-drenched massacre. It was honestly super disturbing for the time, and the game was even censored or outright banned in multiple countries. The British Columbia Film Classification Office, after thorough investigation of the game and its themes of brutality, ended up classifying the game as a pornographic film, not suitable for people under the age of 18. Germany straight up said, "No thanks, fuck that," banned the game and added it to a government list of media deemed harmful to young people. There were other versions of the game that were toned down in the gore department, changing the color of the blood to black goo or just removing the dismemberment entirely. But by this time, the game had already garnered the reputation of being the game parents should be afraid of. At its core, Soldier of Fortune is a tight, corridor-heavy FPS with chunky weapons and a bit of an arcade-style pacing. There's no cover system, no regenerating health, just you, your guns, and a bunch of enemies who explode like overripe tomatoes when you hit them in the sweet spot. The story is campy and doesn't take itself too seriously in most cases, which I think is for the best, as the story's two main antagonists are a tatted up evil Nazi fella named Saber and a mask and techno suit wearing South African evil Nazi fella named Decker. John is contracted to help stop the nukes that Saber, Decker, and the Order has stolen from a Russian nuclear facility. You're tasked to travel the world, collect nukes, and dig up clues to the plans of this mysterious organization. All while you blow through hordes of goons, sending their respective body parts in all directions. Definitely no open casket funeral for these fellas. The game sends you to classic terrorist hotspot levels like a New York subway, a Siberian bunker, Iraq, Uganda, and, in true 2000s fashion, an evil Nazi train level, because why the fuck not? Every mission is linear but packed with environmental variety and enough room to flank or experiment just a little bit. The gunplay is fast and surprisingly smooth for the time. Weapons feel punchy, the shotgun in particular obliterates people, and the shotguns in this series might be some of my favourite of all time, and they utilise the game's properties perfectly. There's also a sneaky bit of attention to realism under all the chaos. Enemies sometimes surrender, civilians get caught in the crossfire, you're penalised for shooting hostages. It tries to inject some moral consequence into the bloodbath, though let's be honest, most players were just here for the carnage. This game oozes early 2000s military cheese in the best way. The voice acting is gravelly, the menu UI looks like it was ripped straight from a VHS Special Ops training tape, the music is crunchy action rock mixed with tension building stealth themes. Every mission briefing that doesn't come via a super secret spy email feels like it was delivered by a guy who's chain smoking off screen. It's not subtle, it's not sophisticated, but it knows what it is and it commits to the bit hard. You're here to stop nukes, shoot bad guys, and blow their legs off, preferably in that order. Now the real question is, Grimo, how are you playing this in the year of our Lord 2025? The answer is fairly simple compared to how I had to get heavy metal to work on my system. And that's that the whole series is actually on good old games, and I use the Soldier of Fortune Plus mod, which I'll link in the description below. The game still holds up visually better than you would expect from a 2000 shooter, thanks to some decent texture work and smart lighting. But the real reason to play it now is to experience that GHOUL system in all its retro glory. No modern game that I can think of, not even games like Dead Space or Sniper Elite that have that focus on dismemberment and pinpoint kills, has been able to capture this exact brand of crunchy, dumb fun. There were multiple versions of this game which I won't be covering today, one that was ported to the PlayStation 2 and another on the Dreamcast. You can check out this short, brilliant review from Retro Game Rater for the PS2 version, and another great review from Tell 'Em He's Dreamin', great name, for the Dreamcast version. I've linked both of these videos down below in the description. So that's it for the original Soldier of Fortune. Part military thriller, part gore tech showcase, all pure, unfiltered early 2000s madness. It's not perfect, it's not even always good, but it's definitely left its mark on me as one of the most fun shooters from that era that I've played to this day. And it paved the way for one of the weirdest sequels ever, one that nobody except for me seemed to want or asked for. Two years after the original blood-soaked Chaos Fest, Raven Software came back with Soldier of Fortune 2 Double Helix. And this time they had something to prove. So what did we get? A darker, more grounded tone, a slower pace, more stealth missions, more talk about geopolitics. But let's be honest, this was still a game where you could turn someone into wet confetti with a shotgun blast. It wanted to be mature, but it still kept the same adolescent glee in its dismemberment system. This was the game that introduced me to the series, and I don't think I ever sat through and played the game start to finish as a kid. I would teleport to different levels using the console and very often turn on God mode to run around and splatter viscera across various different continents. Going back to revisit it, especially after playing the first one for the first time, it was pretty visceral in how different it was from the first game. And I see why there was so many mixed reviews with Double Helix. At its core, Double Helix builds on what made the first game fun, then layers in more complexity and a few stabs at realism. You're still playing as John Mullins, the same war-weathered mercenary with a face like he eats razor blades for breakfast. Soldier of Fortune 2 used the Quake 3 engine this time, along with GHOUL 2 tech, bumping the number of hit zones to 36 and enabling 16 distinct dismemberment zones, making each shot feel gruesomely precise. One dev, John Scott, explained they made multiplayer a priority after single player was complete, although it ultimately played second fiddle to the campaign at the time. Weapons feel heavier, punchier. The shotgun? Still a room clearer, as it should be. However, while rifles like the AK feel pretty alright to use, the M4 might possibly be the least favourite weapon I've ever fired in a video game. Its spray pattern and recoil were insanely over the top, and even while using the single shot firing mode, it was wildly inconsistent. The level design got a serious upgrade too, larger, more open maps with multiple objectives, optional stealth approaches, and more variety in environments. Colombian jungles, Prague alleyways, even a Chinese torture prison.
Of course.
But here's the catch. The pacing was all over the place. One mission you're sneaking through a jungle with marines, and the next you're gunning down 40 goons in a hallway like you're the Punisher. It constantly flip-flops between gritty, tactical, wartime, espionage, realism, and you just turned a guy into a meat fountain. This isn't nearly a bad thing. I still had an absolute blast revisiting the game, but it was definitely an indication of the times. The story was equally as campy as the first one, but it definitely tried to take itself 100 times more seriously. You'll very often have long cutscenes, walking sections, or just long conversations between characters that are flooded with exposition and story. This isn't a bad thing by any stretch, and it leads to some truly awesome line deliveries from John and some of the various villains.
Hold it right there. You're a dead man, Nishrad.
You're too late, Mullins.
Why did you do it, Wilson?
For the money, of course. Hey, what can I say? Peace is bad for business.
And one. But you're the one who...
Sent you on this wild goose chase? Yes. Brilliant, don't you think?
Yeah, ingenious.
Speaking of villains, the primary antagonist for most of the game this time was a not Nazi-looking former KGB fella named Alexei Nishrad. Definitely gives off die-hard villain vibes for sure. His goal was to blackmail the world by poisoning the world leaders at a summit in Switzerland with a super virus. In order to do this, there is a mole in the shop and you spend pretty much the entire game chasing Nishrad around the world, destroying labs to stop the creation of this virus, and sleuthing around to find the mole in the shop. As I just touched on, the game leans more into bioweaponry this time, moving away from the nuclear terror threat, introducing the Romulus and Remus viruses, hence the Double Helix name. Romulus was a COVID-inducing, skin-melting bioweapon killing people in mere minutes. While on the other hand, Remus was a computer virus with the ability to remove all information from the world's database about Romulus, meaning that finding a cure is infinitely harder. The game reviewed well, sold decently, and had a pretty passionate fan base, but it never saw mainstream stardom. Why? A few reasons. The tone was confused, it couldn't decide if it was Rainbow Six or Manhunt. The AI was dumb as fuck. Enemies would walk straight into your line of fire like stormtroopers at a family reunion. And the stealth? Let's just say crouch walking with a silenced pistol didn't quite compensate for the fact that you could still blow someone's head off from 10 feet away with a fully automatic 12-gauge shotgun. Still, Soldier of Fortune 2 had heart. It tried to evolve the series, adding more depth, better tech, and a bit more ambition. And when it clicked, it was glorious. It made you feel like an unhinged one-man army in a world that desperately needed therapy. Soldier of Fortune 2 is one of those rare sequels that's both better and worse than its predecessor at the same time. It plays better in some aspects, looks better in others, but some of the raw charm and I can't believe I just did that energy from the first game got lost somewhere in the process. Still, it's absolutely worth revisiting, especially if you want to see what military shooters looked like before they got sandblasted into sameness. There was also only one console port I could find for this game, which again I won't be covering today, but please check out this awesome review from Camp Xbox for the original Xbox port if you wanted to know more. Up next, the third game in the trilogy, the one that, well, exists, the red-headed stepchild of the series. Soldier of Fortune Payback came out in 2007, 5 years after Double Helix. And let's be clear, this is not a Raven Software game this time. It was made by a completely different development team in the form of Cauldron HQ, a Slovak studio mostly known for hunting sims and other budget titles. Raven was busy being absorbed into the Call of Duty machine by this point, so Activision passed the Soldier of Fortune name and license off like a cursed artifact. The result? A game that tries to look like Soldier of Fortune, tries to sound like Soldier of Fortune, but feels like someone just read a one-paragraph Wikipedia summary of the series and said, "Cool, let's make that," but also worse in almost every way. Let's get one thing straight before we break this game down. This game fucking sucks. You don't play as John Mullins anymore, he's gone. Instead, you're playing as Thomas Mason, a man so generic he might have been generated by an AI trained solely on the very Soldier of Fortune magazines this license was torn from originally. To make things even worse, the game had some major issues on launch, especially the PC version. Bugs were everywhere. Broken checkpoint saves, sound glitches, missing textures, crashes during cutscenes, and enemies clipping through walls. Even patched, the game never felt stable or polished. Hell, I tried to play it, struggled to get it to run in 1080p, and every time I alt-tabbed or tried to fix the resolution, it would completely disable my main monitor. I would have to unplug the display cable and then re-plug it to kickstart the monitor back to life. I've never had a game, new or old, completely disable a piece of hardware in my setup. Outside of being monumentally buggy and borderline unplayable, Payback was banned or heavily censored in multiple countries, as is par for the course for the franchise. The German version featured enemies that sparked instead of bleeding and audio that made them sound like malfunctioning robots. That's right, a game entirely built around blowing people into chunks shipped in some countries with no gore at all. So now you had a broken, shallow shooter with a neutered identity trying to ride the reputation of a franchise it barely resembled. Let's give the game one thing though. When it wasn't censored, the gore was back. Legs don't just come off, they burst. Heads explode into chunks, enemies go ragdolling through the air when you hit them with a grenade, then get shredded into body confetti if they land near a car explosion. It's gratuitous, ridiculous, and kind of hilarious. Almost like someone installed Brutal Doom into a generic Unreal Engine shooter. There's even a sense that the devs knew this was their only real selling point. Most weapons are deliberately tuned for maximum carnage. The Desert Eagle doesn't just knock someone down, it implodes their chest cavity. The shotgun is basically a meat blender. But once the novelty wears off, and it wears off fast, the cracks start showing. Beneath all that gore is a very shallow, very repetitive shooter. Enemies rush at you like you're a buffet, levels are just linear arenas stitched together with copy-pasted scenery. Objectives usually boil down to walk forward, kill everything, open door, repeat. There's no stealth, no interesting mission mechanics, no gadgets, no side objectives, just blood, bullets, and boredom. Outside of the gore, everything else feels like it was designed to meet the bare minimum requirement for being a shooter. It feels weightless and pointless in almost every aspect. The chunkiness from the weapons in the previous game is all but gone, along with the series' identity. So if the gameplay is mid and the AI is suck, maybe the story saves it. Absolutely fucking not. The plot is a generic revenge arc. Your mercenary character gets betrayed during a mission, left for dead, and vows to take down a terrorist network one bullet at a time. That's literally it. No intrigue, no twists, no memorable characters, barely any mention of the shop, no John Mullins, no continuity, just a globe-trotting bloodbath that somehow feels boring despite all the carnage. It does have some absolutely cracker one-liners from the villains and main character though.
We're paid soldiers. I just got paid more to switch teams.
I'm nothing like your people. I kill scum like you. I don't work for them.
Oh, bro, I suck.
Thus far, you've proven exceptionally difficult to kill, and a worthy adversary.
I already hurt you. And after what I've just been through, I've got a lot worse than that planned for you.
No, please, have mercy. I'm not one of them.
The tone overall is what really kills it. The first two Soldier of Fortune games had something. A gritty edge, a little realism, a sense of world and structure. Payback feels like it was written by someone who watched Black Hawk Down once and then filled in the gaps using grok. What an absolute piece of shit. It's edgy in the most surface level way possible. Everyone's angry, everything explodes, and subtlety is legally banned. And just like that, the Soldier of Fortune series faded back into obscurity. Payback didn't just underperform, it was universally panned by critics and fans. Reviewers called it shallow, outdated, and borderline offensive. Not because of the violence, but because of how little respect it had for what the franchise once was. Am I fucking dead here? Piss in my ass! I'm done. I'm fucking done. I can't do this. This is fucking awful. I might come back to this, we'll see. But this is just too shit. Sales were abysmal, word of mouth was even worse. Activision quietly ended up pulling the plug and the series was buried under the avalanche of rising AAA shooters like Call of Duty 4, which coincidentally also came out in 2007 and changed literally everything. The Soldier of Fortune name has unfortunately been dormant ever since. Looking back at the Soldier of Fortune series in 2025, it's hard not to feel like it belongs in a museum, or maybe more accurately an evidence locker. This was a franchise that, in its prime, pushed boundaries in ways few games dared. It wasn't just violent, it was surgically violent. The first game introduced the world to GHOUL damage modeling and showed players just how much detail could go into blowing someone's arm off. It was messy, unapologetic, and somehow still more thoughtful than it had any right to be. Soldier of Fortune 2 built on that by trying to evolve. It brought bigger levels, more depth, smarter tech, and actual tactical moments. It was a little confused tonally, realism on one hand, extreme gore on the other, but when it hit hard. It was Raven Software flexing their muscles before they got locked into the Call of Duty mines. Then came Payback, and that's when the wheels came off. The first two games were messy, but they had identity, they had attitude, they had John Mullins, a real dude with a real face, giving a human touch to a series otherwise drenched in bullets and blood. Payback was the opposite, a hollow sequel made by a different studio with no narrative, no continuity, and no soul whatsoever. It took the most superficial part of the franchise, the gore, and built the entire game around it, forgetting the balance that made the earlier entries work. It's the classic tale. Bold indie energy, creative risks, a growing fan base, then corporate handoff, budget constraints, and voila, the magic's gone. Too many times did we see this happen around this time, and it still persists to this very day. If you enjoy blood-soaked romps through military tactical shooters, then give these classics a try. The first game is definitely worth a playthrough, and it's one of those games I can see myself going back and playing once a year, just to get my few hours of carnage and get back to my desk job in reality. Just make sure you steer clear of Payback. The only thing I want Payback on is my order from GOG. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to catch more of me, I stream most of the games I make videos on live on my Twitch channel, Grimo_TV. So if you want sneak peeks at upcoming videos or to have long nostalgic chats with fellow peers, consider chucking me a follow. Don't forget to leave a comment below also and tell me, what are some of your fondest memories with a first-person shooter in the early 2000s?